Next topic we're going to really cover is VMware Tanzu on VxRail. So we're going to really pivot in that same VxRail category, but kind of pivot to those cloud native use case topics. So my name is Jason Marques. I'm a senior principal engineering technologist with the VxRail Technical Marketing team. And the next few sessions are actually going to be a combination of myself as well as a peer of mine working over at VMware, Chris Catano, who is actually going to be doing a demo of running Tanzu on VxRail. So Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. As mentioned, my name is Chris Catano. I come from a strategic relationship between VMware and Dell Technologies, which is really focused on helping organizations partner and understand the value in that modernization strategies and how we can take best advantage of our partnerships together. So over the last couple of years, we've developed quite a robust strategy, and Jason and I are partnered today to hopefully give you a few insights and a little bit greater depth into that. Thank you, Jason.
I appreciate it, Chris. All right, so this particular session is going to focus on Tanzu on VxRail solutions overview. So it's really going to kind of describe the different solution offerings that exist in the Dell Technologies portfolio that are VxRail based, that are kind of geared at supporting running Tanzu on top of VxRail. And there's a few different options, and we'll certainly get into all of them and answer any questions as you guys have as we move along. So I want to start the conversation off with really describing the VxRail layer of the stack. And really highlight the value that kind of VxRail delivers to Tanzu as a whole. So there are kind of three major areas, and you kind of see them listed on this slide. So we're going to kind of start on the left and kind of move our way to the right. The first way VxRail delivers value to Tanzu environments is that we assist customers in accelerating adoption of Tanzu. And we do this in a few ways. The first is being able to package what is essentially that curated HCI infrastructure layer that kind of underpins your Tanzu environment, right? You kind of need to run Tanzu on some sort of x86 infrastructure. And so how quickly we can get that infrastructure deployed, validated, and configured so that you can turn Tanzu on and deploy workloads, that is a key driver, as you've seen in many other previous sessions, through the HCI system software that is integrated in every VxRail, through the integrated vSphere and vSAN that provides that compute network and storage pooled abstraction of resources for those Tanzu workloads, and through the integrated hardware that we have through the Dell EMC PowerEdge servers, all of those fully curated and fully delivered to a customer ready to deploy. Now, we kind of have that validation as a part of what helps accelerate, because there's less time doing all of that testing and support matrix validation. But the HCI system software certainly delivers on a lot of that automation capability, not just through a day zero deployment experience, but also through that day two scalability. Certainly, as we know, in the new kind of cloud native development arena through kind of these DevOps processes, agility and speed is everything. So these developers who kind of require a little bit of a self-service on-demand set of resources to deploy their apps need the infrastructure to be just as agile. And so we are empowering through VxRail and its automation capabilities, IT operators to deliver quickly the infrastructure that your developers need. And in so we kind of have some examples of being able to add and scale VxRail clusters in about a 15-minute time frame by adding additional nodes through some of that HCI system automation capability. So the next kind of column here is being able to help customers rapidly evolve their Kubernetes infrastructure environment, but also Kubernetes itself. And we do this in kind of a trickle-down effect, which is actually pretty cool, through what VMware is innovating in the vSphere with Tanzu arena, but also in what already exists in our joint engineering relationship of VxRail with VMware. So what was probably talked about, and Ash had mentioned this in prior conversations and sessions as well, that VxRail is this jointly engineered HCI system And as a result of the kind of release cadence, we have a 30-day synchronous ship partnership with VMware. So as VMware releases a new version of vSphere within 30 days, we will be able to deliver that new version on VxRail in an HCI integrated system consumption model for net new deployments for customers or for existing upgrades for existing customers.
I'm going to miss this. What's RA?
RA stands for reference architecture, and we'll touch on that in a second.
Yeah, I knew that, but it was like it didn't make sense in context. Sorry.
No worries about it. Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of SIMship is extremely important because, as I mentioned, we kind of piggyback off of the innovation that VMware is handling. Right? We've already discussed that co-engineering at the vSphere HCI stack level with our SIMship, but on the flip side, VMware is also trying to align with the Kubernetes open source project and how they can deliver new Kubernetes features that are, engineered through that open source project into vSphere with each new vSphere release. And so as a result, VMware will always try to align new Kubernetes features in their vSphere releases to make sure they're keeping pace with the Kubernetes open source project. So as a result, they embed new Kubernetes features in vSphere. When new vSphere is released, we then have that 30-day SIMship with VxRail. And so through that relationship, customers are able to take advantage of new Kubernetes features with that vSphere with Tanzu functionality, all within that 30-day window. So it's not just enabling an evolution of the underlying HCI infrastructure, but due to that kind of innovation that VMware is making on the Kubernetes side, we can help them evolve their Kubernetes components as well.
So wait, I just want to be clear because you guys are only 30 days behind new VMware releases on VxRail?
Correct. And as Ash had indicated, for net new vSphere releases, it's 30 days, and we typically have a 14-day window for things like security patches and express patches. And so that's how we're able to kind of guarantee customers that we'll always enable them to adopt the latest and greatest VMware technology so that they're evolving as the technology innovation evolves.
So Jason, this is Ray Lucchese. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
The Tanzu is not running what I would call Kubernetes directly. It's a re-implementation of Kubernetes features and functions on VMware. Is that? I'm trying to understand how compatible. I guess the question is, how compatible is Tanzu to Kubernetes?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So vSphere with Tanzu is embedded Kubernetes within vSphere. And that level of Kubernetes being native to the vSphere hypervisor is a kind of proprietary way in which VMware is taking advantage of Kubernetes technology to enhance vSphere. Now, as a feature of that, there are capabilities that customers can deploy Kubernetes clusters as a set of virtual machine clusters running on the hypervisor that are completely conformant to the Kubernetes open source project distribution. So a customer can take advantage of the embedded Kubernetes control plane features and the ability to run native container pods on vSphere, which is brought to you by the vSphere with Tanzu implementation. But as a result, if there is a need for developers to deploy a conformant Kubernetes cluster, then they can still do so through this control plane and run that native Kubernetes cluster directly on the vSphere cluster itself.
And it's running via Tanzu control, though, in that case.
Correct. So, and we'll get into this a little bit in the next slide. That's part of the value with the vSphere with Tanzu innovation is essentially that we're offering developers a self-service native Kubernetes CLI experience to deploy and consume and manage their own Kubernetes clusters.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome.
Jason, I was going to mention, we'll touch on that in the demo as well. So Ray will be able to give you a little bit of a visual background onto what Jason's explaining there once we get into that section.
Yeah, great point. All right, so the last thing to touch on as far as the VxRail value for Tanzu is that we're assisting customers through our portfolio to get Kubernetes their way by offering a choice of infrastructure delivery options that are VxRail based for Tanzu use cases. And Dell Technologies is the only vendor that has solutions for reference architecture-based deployments, cluster-based deployments, and then full-blown hybrid cloud offerings. So if I want to run essentially Kubernetes as part of a reference architecture approach, we have that. If I want to run Kubernetes in kind of individual cluster deployment models, we have that. And if your goal is to deploy a full-blown hybrid cloud platform, we offer ways in which we can support running Tanzu on top of that. So the next part to the conversation is really to dive a little bit deeper into each of those and kind of highlight what the components are that make them up and some of the benefits that each delivers. So before I move forward, I'll kind of pause for any type of questions that you guys have. All right, so next up, we're going to dive into each of the actual solutions that kind of make up the portfolio. And so the first one we'll highlight is the reference architecture approach. All right, so this is what we call the Tanzu architecture for VxRail. This may have been something you have heard of before. It was also referenced as the pivotal ready architecture a few years back. And ultimately, this is a solution approach geared for customers who are looking to develop on a validated PaaS and CaaS platform. Okay, now the underlying components that kind of make this up are the Tanzu application service and the TKGI service or platform. Now, the Tanzu application service is all based on the open source Cloud Foundry project. And the TKGI is kind of VMware's distribution of Kubernetes that is also kind of based off of the foundational building blocks introduced in that Cloud Foundry open source project. Ultimately, when I look at Tanzu application service, that is delivering that PaaS experience, while the TKGI portion is delivering on that container as a service. Either way, either of these platform components are built upon a BOSH abstraction layer underneath. And BOSH is ultimately the kind of layer of the stack that delivers and provisions the underlying IaaS resources for those platform components. And this is kind of designed to be managed a little separately than the underlying VxRail HCI system software. We have Ops Manager, which is kind of a part of this, as well as the PKS CLI to help manage all of these kind of TaaS and TKGI platform components to deploy, as well as to lifecycle manage. And then you have the rest of the stack as far as vCenter, which is what you use to update the VxRail HCI stack itself. The other key part to this is that the solution has been validated with NSXT as the software-defined networking. And there is an optional piece of what we have validated to leverage Dell EMC object storage with Dell EMC ECS if you want to embed some sort of or integrate some sort of object storage into that stack. Now, we kind of look at this solution as geared towards customers who have a goal of really deploying containerized cloud-native applications only. And again, who have kind of this familiarity with Cloud Foundry and kind of we're already kind of down that road of cloud-native development kind of expertise. Now, the middle solution here is really that cluster approach that we mentioned before. And this is the vSphere with Tanzu on VxRail offering. So this is geared at customers who want to embrace Kubernetes through vSphere and those native VMware tools that they're already used to using. All right, this is essentially the fastest way to deploy Kubernetes and run Kubernetes on vSphere available today. In this case, we are leveraging the cluster API as the underlying resource provisioning layer to configure and provision all of those Kubernetes resource components. And the other aspect to this is that we are leveraging the same native VMware tooling that are, again, embedded in vSphere and therefore using vCenter as a prime management element for this. For your developers, they're going to be leveraging the same native Kubernetes, CLI, and API constructs with the kube control to self-service provision their own Kubernetes resources and then have them run on this vSphere cluster. Another important aspect to this is that it is built upon a network flexible architecture. So the default networking that would be used in this implementation is the native vSphere distributed switch model. So this is what enables customers to really accelerate being able to deploy this, because there isn't anything completely separate that you need to be deploying in order to enable vSphere with Tanzu on a vSphere cluster to get started. However, there is support if a customer does have advanced SDN networking requirements. You certainly can leverage NSXT in this case, or even for customers that have a need for certain third-party SDNs that are Kubernetes compatible, they can leverage those if they have that level of expertise to do so. The stack here in this case is fully integrated from an LCM point of view. So as I mentioned before, with VxRail, we embed vSphere, we embed vSAN, the hardware, all that stuff, and we obviously can provide that full automated lifecycle management of that HCI stack for customers. That is also the case here, where natively through vCenter, we can provide that stack update through the vCenter management experience. So a fully integrated HCI stack plus being able to update the vSphere that you have with vSphere with Tanzu enabled on it, all part of that VxRail LCM experience. So in this case,
Jason,
yes,
there's a couple of things. The load balancer and the registry, I mean, how does that play out with the middle selection here?
So in this case, there are certain components, and Chris certainly chime in here too. But certain components do require the use of an SDN like NSXT. The registry service, the native vSphere pods are a part of that. So those are optional components to leverage as a part of vSphere with Tanzu. They are not required. So that's why customers, if they just want to get started and get familiar with Kubernetes, they can still leverage the native vSphere distributed switches in order to get through enabling it and deploying workloads.
All right, thanks.
Chris, anything to add to that?
No, you got it.
Awesome. Okay.
Once again, I'll give a peek into that here in a few.
Yep. All right. So the last thing to highlight on this solution is that, again, really leveraging the innovation that VMware has brought to the table with vSphere with Tanzu, is that we have the ability for customers to run native containerized applications side by side with traditional VM-based workloads, all on the same infrastructure. So now VxRail can be the underpinning HCI stack for customers to kind of create a common unified infrastructure platform for developer workloads as well as typical business workloads that might be VM based. This simplifies the IT operator experience because you're not creating siloed infrastructure just for the developer workloads versus what might be IT systems and the like. And this really helps streamline that infrastructure management experience and, again, provide speed and agility and simplification to the underlying infrastructure that underpins your Kubernetes workloads. All right, and the last one to highlight here is the Cloud Foundation with Tanzu on VxRail. This is for customers that want to adopt Kubernetes on this unified cloud platform approach. This is really geared at customers that need to scale their Kubernetes environments and scale the infrastructure and allow IT operators to simplify what that operations experience will be to support doing that. And that's through the Cloud Foundation platform as a co-engineered cloud platform with VxRail. And in this case, Cloud Foundation delivers something pretty unique in the sense that it delivers a full-blown SDDC as a fully integrated platform itself. So the NSXT SDN aspect of this is fully built into VCF and is a native part to VCF. So it really makes managing and scaling these Kubernetes environments and providing the full breadth of all of these vSphere with Tanzu services rocking and ready to go when you deploy VCF. And obviously through that co-engineering with VxRail, we have a lot of that full stack lifecycle management and automation from the HCI system stack all the way up through the VCF cloud management components as kind of a single turnkey deliverable. Now, the Kubernetes and the vSphere with Tanzu pieces to this solution will kind of leverage a lot of the same management and architecture that you get in the vSphere with Tanzu and VxRail, meaning that it's built upon the cluster API as the underlying provisioning and resource provisioning technology under the covers. The management tools are going to be the same with one exception. You are going to get one additional VMware management component in SDDC Manager, which is kind of delivered with VCF as that kind of cloud element manager to deliver infrastructure provisioning and lifecycle management. As is the case with VCF, NSXT is built in, so you get that kind of NSXT only type of environment here. So customers who really want to scale and standardize with NSXT, this would be an excellent solution for that. So the use case here, you gain the same benefits of running cloud native applications side by side with VM-based apps, all on a common infrastructure that can scale. And so this is really the portfolio, right? We provide different solutions with different levels of full stack automation and certain levels of integrated lifecycle management that helps simplify the operations experience to accelerate the IT infrastructure delivery, as well as the Kubernetes enablement for customers, depending upon where they are in their Kubernetes readiness.